I asked this question at press conferences in the Middle East. Why Arab families, whose families have been torn apart literally by American weapons used by the Israelis, do not or are not encouraged by people in this audience, for example. I'm not telling you to, I'm just asking the question. To sue the American weapons makers whose missiles and rockets tear their families apart, literally. One of the things I do, because doing my job, you become a weapons expert. There's nothing I can't tell you about the air-to-ground AGM-114C missile, except that it was made in Duluth, Georgia, and is now made in Florida. And I found the computer plates of these in lots of places in Lebanon. An ambulance was attacked with a missile in 1996, just behind me. 3 children, 2 women dead. And a UN Swedish intelligence officer and myself got all the bits of the plates of the missile from the bodies in some cases, and got them all to the United States, complete with fins, engine cone, the lot, in bits, of course, it had exploded, and took it to the Boeing manufacturers, and we had the developer of the missile at the table. They thought they were going to use me to advertise this wonderful missile. One of them said it can be fired from 3 miles away and go through a baseball hoop, which means the ambulance had no chance, you see. And they became extremely nervous. They exploded louder than the original missile did almost, because I put the bits of the missile down the table. At first they denied it was a Hellfire missile. And then I turned to the PR man of Boeing. I said, that's a lie. You know it's a 114C. He said, yeah, it is. And then I put the pictures of the dead and wounded children and women on the table. And they were profoundly shocked. And the first thing they wanted to know is this about a legal action? What was particularly interesting about this missile, in case you think the story is innocent, or easy I meant, is that my assumption was it had been sold to the Israelis. After I wrote the story, it was on the front cover of our magazine, Return to Sender. Not a single American newspaper followed it up. A missile manufacturer in France rang me up and said it was sold to the US Marine Corps, not to the Israelis. And I rushed back to Washington. It's great for frequent flyer points. You know. And I went to see the Marine Corps officers just outside Washington. They agreed. They were worried about this. Because it said 01, which is the NATO coding for American missiles, and then it said M, which is Marines. And it turned out that this missile had been sold to the US Marine Corps by Boeing, Lockheed. It had been taken to Saudi Arabia to be used against Iraqi forces in Kuwait in 1991. It had not been used. 350 of the 700 batch of the 114C were not used. And then the Marines were ordered to put the remaining missiles unused ashore at the Haifa munitions pier as part of an arms agreement with Israel, which was not advertised, to say thank you to Israel for not joining in the Gulf War at that time against Saddam Hussein. So this missile started off in Duluth, Georgia, went to the US Marine Corps, was taken to Saudi Arabia, up to Kuwait, back to Saudi Arabia, onto Haifa, and was fired at the ambulance behind me 10 years after it was made. But what was particularly interesting is when I rang Lockheed up, they said, what are you ringing me for? It's like asking a person who makes a knife, is he responsible for a guy who gets killed by the same knife years later? The answer is no, but if you sold a machine gun to a man you know was going to misuse it, you would be in court.